Okay, we are live. You're gonna put the agenda on the screen, Lisa?
I think Byron is.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I know Linda's here. Do we have Patricia? Is Patricia with us?
I don't see her in the participants list.
Okay. Kara Dyckman. Kara, you're with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, we have 3, so that's a quorum. I'm quite sure Patricia's going to be joining us, but we have a quorum, so I'm gonna call the meeting to order at 4:30. Okay, and I've done a roll call with the 3 of us. Hopefully Patricia's gonna join us sometime soon. Okay, do we have any amendments to the agenda? Okay, if we don't have any amendments to the agenda, I have a motion to adopt that agenda.
I so move.
Moved by Linda, got a second from you,
Second.
Kara?
Yep,
Okay,
second.
second by Kara, all in favor, aye.
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 Okay, thank you, and aye, okay. Now, we're down to the minutes, and Byron sent me an email earlier that, you know, Byron is taking over for replacing Chris Griner. He sent me an email earlier stating that Chris had the minutes, but they're in Anderson, South Carolina. It's going to be a few days before he can send those to Byron, because Chris is actually staying in Athens here with his in-laws. So we're going to have to approve the minutes later, even at the next, excuse me, next meeting. Okay, so we're down to the financial report. And Chris, 4.1, I'm going to turn it over to you. Not Chris, I'm sorry, Byron.
All right, thanks, Dr. Worthy. First order of business, I was going to introduce Tom Porter. Tom's our new finance director. He has a CPA. He comes to us. His most recent position was with UGA, but before that, he's got over 8 years of experience with Franklin County Schools. He was their finance director, and they don't have a chief financial officer.
At the end of last semester, when I would meet with Linda and Dr. Neese, it wasn't everything that we had.
Lisa, how do I mute everybody else?
We met 2 weeks before the work session, and I couldn't, it seemed extremely early. I think we did. It felt very early.
So just moving on, Tom has also been a
Maybe
member
text
of
Lisa.
County Board of Education.
Can somebody I think it's Lisa.
There we go. That works.
Okay.
Good.
We had someone else's meeting come through. So Tom, if you want to say anything to the board, you're on mute now.
Yes, he is.
Hey, Tom, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, tomorrow will be my, I have all of 2 weeks at Clark County, but I'm just glad to be here. I certainly enjoy working with Byron, and I'm anxious to, to learn more about Clark County, the finances. I think you guys have looking at your financial statements, I think you got a very strong balance sheet. I think it's a great policy to have that 15% fund balance. So I'm just excited to be here. Like Byron was saying, I've got 8 years experience in school accounting, as well as I got public and private accounting as well, but just great to be here, and I look forward to getting to know everybody.
Well, welcome aboard, Tom. And of course, on the finance committee, That's Linda Davis, Carol Dyckman, and also Patricia Yeager and I'm Charles Worthy. So welcome aboard, and I'm quite sure you'll be meeting all of the other board members pretty soon. Some of them probably going to be a part of this meeting today. Okay.
Okay,
Turn it
thank
back to
you.
you. Becky.
I'm here as well. Mr.
Antoine is here.
Okay. That's Antoine Stevens. He's District 2. Okay.
Thanks, Tom. And thanks, Dr. Worthy.
All righty.
We'll move on to our June 2020 year-end financial statements. And unlike years past, obviously F20 was an out of the ordinary year. You know, we kind of closed our doors and went all virtual in March, and as such, we kind of saw different trends financially speaking. And so, rather than just show you guys the balance sheet as well as a revenue report and an expenditure report, I thought it would be a good idea to put together a small narrative just to help piece together some of the puzzles that made FY20 so quirky. So if you guys have time and want to read over and maybe learn better or understand better with a narrative, I provided a short narrative leading into these financial statements.
I so appreciated that. That was wonderful. So you know I'm going to be expecting it from now on.
Well, I don't know if I plan on doing it for every set of financial statements. I just thought it was important wrapping up a fiscal year to kind of give you
Right.
a narrative that goes along with the numbers to say, hey, this is why it shaped up the way that it did.
Good. Highlights would be excellent. So thank you again. That really made it so much easier to get back into this frame of mind for me, because this is not what I do for a living.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was really helpful, Byron, especially sort of caught me up. My eyes sort of bucked when I saw that we had added $5.1 million to the fund balance. As Tom Porter mentioned a few minutes ago, we have a healthy fund balance, and that is always important.
But kicking this off, the first part we're going to look at are the revenues. And we had budgeted $165 million in revenue. We actually received $165.5 million in revenue. So we exceeded our revenue budget by $500,000. A couple areas to highlight where we received more than we anticipated, more than we budgeted. $370,000 in ad valorem or property taxes, $400,000 in transfer and intangible taxes. And then also on behalf payments, which is a journal entry that we make. It's not money or funds that we receive from the district or from the state, but it's expenses that the state pays for us on behalf of the district. So they pay for certain employees TRS and all of PSERS. So those employees that are part of the PSERS, which are all of our transportation employees and most of our school food employees fall under that hat of PSERS. CCSD doesn't pay a penny into that retirement system. Instead, our employees have a small nominal charge. I think it's like $12 a month. And then the state picks up the other big portion of it. So we just record a revenue on our financials for that. So that's an area that Larry hadn't budgeted in the past, and I'm kind of scratching my head as to why, and I'll plan on budgeting for it. But anyway, we exceeded that budget by $430,000. Then on the other end of the spectrum, an area, the primary area that we fell short of our projections. So we budgeted one figure and we fell short of that was with our QBE funds. Typically, we get an advice from the state that says, hey, you're going to receive this amount in QBE funds throughout the fiscal year. And 99% of the time we can count on that without fault. What happened was in FY21, we received some austerity measures. And so the austerity that started in July and August, the money that the state withheld from the QBE funds, is actually accrued back to June of 2020. So although the austerity measures from the state didn't come in until July and August, we accrued that austerity back to the prior period. And so as such, we collected about $1.1 million less in QBE revenues from the state than we anticipated. So when you net all that activity together, where we exceeded the budget, where we fell short of the budget, we had about $500,000 that we collected in excess of what we anticipated. For our expenditures, this is really where the big savings, the big change, the big impact on our fund balance is coming from. We had budgeted 166 million. We only spent 160.9 million. And once we dive into these financials, you'll see that it's primarily on the instruction line item where there's the vast majority of the savings. And unlike years past where that savings was primarily due and the lion's share was due to salary and benefit savings, this year, over 60% of it is operational savings. And that makes total sense when you think about the year that we had. And we didn't close our doors, but we went all virtual in March. We had a lot of savings when it came to utilities, when it came to contracted services, when it came to buying supplies. We had quite a bit of savings in those operational type expenditure line items that we don't typically see in an ordinary year. So it was a little bit more heavily weighted in operational savings as opposed to salary and benefits, because although we did go all virtual, we continued to pay salaries and benefits throughout the entire year. We never cut back, we never held back on paying those salaries and benefits. So bottom line, with the savings when it came to less expenditures than anticipated and also more revenues than anticipated, we added $4.5 million to our fund balance in FY20. And if you recall, and I know Ms. Davis does, that we added about $800,000 in FY19. So when you combine the FY19 and the FY20 savings, $5.3 million over the course of the 2 years that we've added to our fund balance. And that really kind of set us up in a safe position leading into FY21, which we know is a rocky year. We already anticipate spending more than we're going to bring in. We also are moving funds out to pay for the new property on Prince Avenue. And when you consider those two amounts, the reduction to our fund balance to kind of fill the gaps of the FY21 budget, as well as the $2.8 million transferred out to pay for the Prince Avenue project, over the course of 3 years, that fund balance will pretty much be neutral. That $5.3 million that we saw added to the budget is really, we'll likely see going away from our fund balance in FY21. So, although when we look at over the course of those 3 years, our fund balance, what we've got in our bank account, basically staying neutral, at the end of FY21, which is the year that we're in, I anticipate that we'll hover still around that 15% fund balance benchmark that we've set as a district. And I really think that's a good, safe place to be in leading into FY22. And the position I'm in, I feel like the uncertainty in FY22 is even greater than it was in FY21. You know, we don't know if there's going to be continued austerity. There could be some more austerity at the state level. We may not have, and it's likely that we won't have any more CARES Act funding. And then on top of that, our enrollment is down almost 10%. I think Lynn set out the enrollment data. and it's down quite a bit. And as you know, our QBE revenue is driven by that enrollment data. So if our enrollment goes down 10% in FY21, then that means in FY22, our FY22 QBE revenue will also decrease. We'll see a decrease in that. So I have reached out to the state and I said, hey, is there any kind of talk at the state level, the lawmakers, as they notice this enrollment data decreasing, falling, the whole district's harmless for that, and say, hey, if you've seen a decrease in your enrollment, we're not going to penalize you for that. And she said that they're aware of it at the state level of that decrease in enrollment. And although they haven't made any decisions as of yet, they are talking about it. So that being said, I'll go ahead and start with the balance sheet.
Byron, before you leave that, I want to make a comment because I had wondered about this with the pandemic going on and the school district not being full operational, you know, with kids in the building and teachers in the building since March. I was just wondering whether we had saved some money by doing that, and you just brought us up to date on that. So thank you, because I do know several years ago, I think back something like maybe from 2005 up to about 2008, and I know it's probably changed now, every day that the school district would open the doors, it would cost $500,000. But thank you for doing that. And of course, when you mentioned about the 10% drop in enrollment, yeah, the FTE counts would go down, and that have affected several other areas too. Even Georgia High School Association dropped the athletic programs back, football, basketball, well, all of them, from 5A to 4A. And many people don't realize that your school going to be classified according to your enrollment. So hopefully we won't have any austerity cuts, you know, when the FY, what is it, FY 21, 22 budget comes out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you for that.
You're welcome. And what I just brought up on the screen, you know, I talked about the operational savings versus the salaries and benefits. And you can see the breakdown here. So we're in Fund 100, and this is our functions. And I've broken it up between operational savings and salary and benefit savings. And I've also talked about how Fund 150, or the consolidation, it muddies the water and makes things not quite as crystal clear. And that's this consolidation column here. And what I've done is taken that consolidation column and distributed it based off of a percentage in Title I to be either operational or salaries and benefits. And so the total savings due to operational, roughly 3.8 million. Salaries and benefits is about 2 million. And then we were over budget, which is not really an item to budget for, in transfers. And that makes up our total savings there of 5 million. So you can see, Mr. Worthy, the amount of operational savings is quite a bit larger than what we saved on salaries and benefits. And that's atypical compared to a normal year.
Yes, okay.
So if we're looking at our balance sheet for the end of FY20 at 6/30, we ended up with a cash balance of $43.8 million. And that $43.8 million is roughly $6 million greater than where we were at last year. So the blue line is tracking our cash balance in FY19, and the yellowish orange is tracking our cash balance in FY20. And as you can see, ever since September, we had quite a bit of property tax collected in October, and we have trended above that 2019 cash balance throughout the year. And we did end up like I said, about $6 million more in cash than we had in FY19. And the way that's divvied up, at the end of the year, we had about $4.3 million in our BB&T account. Actually, we combined those two into our BB&T account. And then we had $36.6 million sitting in our Georgia Fund 1 account. And that was because the Georgia Fund 1 account at the time was earning significantly more interest than we could get in our BB&T account. And further down on the agenda, we're going to be talking about the future of Fund 101, the future of Fund 110 and 111. And these will be not utilized for the remaining of FY21, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. Our fund balance, and that's primarily what we're concerned with. You're taking your assets, subtracting out whatever liabilities you have, and it's a kind of a true measuring point from one time frame to the next. We're looking at our unassigned and assigned fund balances. We add these two together down here, and we're looking at a total fund balance at the end of FY20 of $34.5 million compared to almost $30 million the same time frame last year. So that's where that $4.5 million addition to our fund balance can be seen, is in this graph. And as you can see, we've identified that green line, that 15% fund balance threshold. At the end of the year, we're safely above it. As we get into July and August and September of FY21, we may slightly dip below that line, but I don't anticipate much, if any, during FY21, but that may be a different story in FY22. Anybody have any questions about the balance sheet before we move on?
So just again, it'll be a different story in FY22, probably because of austerity. Is that kind of what we're thinking, or what do you think?
Well, if you recall the budget for FY21, we are utilizing, I think it's $2.7 million of our fund balance to kind of fill the gaps. That's what's budgeted so far.
Right.
If it goes as planned, and if we stick to our budget, that fund balance is going to decrease by about $2.7 million. And then we're also using about $2.8 million of that fund balance to start paying towards expenses on the Prince Avenue property.
Okay, so these are, okay, I remember us talking about that before, but what I don't think I'm probably not making a connection between our SPLOST monies and again, our concern that would go down, but it has not. And so maybe I can't.
Ms. Davis,
yes.
This column here, this is our property fund.
Yes.
When we originally sold our last board offices,
right,
all the money into this property account. And I think over the years, there have been some expenditures out of there, but for the most part, the believe it is there. And what I guess I wasn't part of it then, but I believe Chris presented to the board a plan to utilize everything in the property fund to go to this new property.
Right.
So what we're going to do is take this $2.8 million and we're going to transfer it into a capital project account, getting ourselves set up to buy this property and do renovations.
Okay. I think I read that in your memo or someplace about setting up capital accounts, and so I'll wait until we get to that part. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, that brings us to our statement of revenues. We did talk about the areas where our revenue collection was a little stronger than anticipated. And that was our ad valorem property taxes, as well as our intangible and transfer taxes here. We had combined almost $800,000 in budget additions. We fell short slightly on our TAVT revenues. And then also transportation fees. Those are the fees that we charge departments, or we charge outside entities anytime we have buses used for field trips. And as you can imagine, our schools shut down. We're not going on field trips, and we did collect quite a bit less transportation fees than typical. The investment income line item, we fell short by almost $160,000. I was talking to Tom earlier, and I feel like we were lucky to get where we were in that investment income line item, just because of the way the market shaped up. By the halfway through the year, we were earning basically nothing in our checking account. The Georgia Fund 1 dropped down to next to nothing, and the T-bills that we purchased were at around 1.5%, and I think Barry had budgeted anticipating was closer to the realm of 2.5% to 3%. So I do feel like we're fortunate to get that close in our investment income line item. For if you net all of these QBE line items together, where we saw a total decrease of over 500,000 if you net all these together, and that is primarily due to that accrual being impacted by the austerity in FY21. Here's the greater than anticipated on behalf payments that were recorded. We also have our transfers in being slightly more than anticipated. So all in all, when you look at our revenues, we collected 500 grand more than anticipated. The way that shapes up is we collected 100.3% of what we budgeted. When you look at how that is allocated out, we received 74.3 from the state. That makes up about 45% of our general fund budget. And local funds was about 90.3 million. And Tom can probably attest to this, but this is where you'll see quite a bit of change from school district to school district. You may have quite a bit more funds in an area that has less or not as great of a property tax digest. I think we're in a very fortunate county where we've got a pretty healthy digest, and that's what attributes to this allocation here. So before we move on from revenues, does anyone have any questions over our revenue report?
So yeah, we do have I think again, when we talk about property taxes, there were some significant increases across the county in several areas. Do we have a forecast as to, are we seeing, have they already projected what that revenue is going to look like?
I think we're kind of jumping the gun there.
Okay.
So Chris, in his budget, if I went back to it, we could pull that up and see what he had budgeted in terms of an increase. I know he talked to Mr. Dunnigan, I think, and I don't want to venture a guess, but since
it's okay, you don't have to. I was just curious because I know that yes, my property tax bills came in, and several people that I've talked to are just totally upset because there were significant increases across the county in some places. So yeah.
Right. I think it was close to 8%.
Yes, that's a lot.
Of an increase in values. So we kept our millage rate the same, but the value of properties, the assessment value increased.
Yeah, absolutely.
The increase in taxes that people saw.
So do we see that 8%, or what do we see? What percent? What part of that do we typically see? Do you know? That's
the portion. So the way the Board of Education taxes is the properties are assessed.
Right.
40% of that tax assessed value, then we assess a millage rate on it.
Right.
So that's up to the board to assess that millage rate, and that's part of the budget discussion. And
Okay.
the board actually formally adopts the millage rate in June.
So we're still at 20, right? Okay.
It's very important what you mentioned there, Byron, because the assessed value of property, you pay 40% of that. And I was thinking back, all the way back to Larry Hammer. Of course, Chris said it too. And what Linda's saying, you know, with the tax digest and looking at your tax bill, you have an increase, you know, every year, according to what was said by Larry Hammer and Chris, especially Larry, that is going to continue to go up. You have a number of investors, I guess some locally and some not locally. They come and they take something like a $60,000, $70,000 house, renovate it, also increase the square footage in it, etc. And some of them houses are going on the market for 300, 400, or even up to $500,000, especially around the Piedmont, Athens regional area, and there are a few other areas too. So in essence, when you look at it, the tax digest is going to increase every year.
Oh, I see. Yeah, 7.47. I just forgot that. All right, thank you. You took me right there.
So I think that 7.47, if that's the overall digest, that's got two components. That's got increases in values of existing properties due to market prices going up, but also has new growth. So that doesn't mean that people's values went up 8%. That's a portion of that total 8% or 7.5%.
Right.
You're right. And Chris broke it down down here that the tax digest grew by 7.47%, and that's made up of reassessments. So the assessments grew or increased by 5.83%, as well as the growth that Mr. Pruitt just pointed out of 1.64%.
So as taxpayers, we'd like to see that reversed.
Right.
But
So
don't
I
think
live
it
in a
will.
bubble, so I'm happy. I'm happy. Mine didn't go up at all. It's just a matter of time, but right now I'm still coasting, so we're good.
Okay, so are we good with our revenue report?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so moving on to our expenditures. You know, not only did we talk about our expenditures by function, I did share out the savings broken out by operations versus salaries and benefits. You can see over here on the right-hand column by function, where we overspent or where we underspent. And I've mentioned it several times that these top few functional categories are kind of muddied by the consolidation that we have going on with transferring out quite a bit of our budget into Fund 150, it being combined with other federal sources, the expenditures take place, and then we move it back based off of percentages. Based off of those allocation percentages, where it ends up landing isn't necessarily where we originally budgeted it. So we really have to add those up together to look at them cumulatively. And if we do so, you can definitely see that there's a significant amount of budget savings in Fund 100 and in Fund 150. Overall, like I mentioned before, the total expenditures that we did not spend, so under budget, was $5.81 million, $5,081,000. So that we spent 96.9% of our authorized budget. Compared to last year, we spent 99.2. And then you can see here the trend over the months of when those expenditures take place. Does anybody have any questions about our final expenditure report for FY20.
I don't right now. I read it and I comprehended it. Let me say that in terms of the understanding what I think I'm seeing, but I may have some later as I think about it more.
Okay.
Seems very clear to me right now.
And our final report is the cash flow projection. And if you recall, this worksheet is really useful for us throughout the year. We're trying to combine what's actually been expended and then add on what we anticipate over the remaining months to kind of project what our ending fund balance addition or decrease is going to be. And in May, at the end of May's financials, I think Chris predicted about a $4.5 million budget addition, and we landed right at about $4.5 million. So the orange is actuals, the blue is projected. We don't have any more projected since the entire year is complete. So everything is orange. Everything that you see here on the screen is actuals. So it's actual receipts by the month, by line item, actual expenses by the month, by functional category. And overall, this is the final picture that you see, adding $4.5 million to our budget, or $4.5 million to our fund balance.
Fund balance, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Worthy, shall I go on to the supplemental reports?
Sure.
All right. Looking at legal services first, we expended a total of $281,000. We had a budget of $160,000. We overspent that budget by about $120,000. We did, at the end of the year, transfer some additional budget to cover that. We definitely had the budget savings elsewhere, but compared to our original budget, which I think was very conservative, we overspent by $120,000 in this category. Just for kind of, so we can look at where we spent it throughout the year, I've separated it out by vendor. Hall Booth Smith, $241,000. The Employment Law Solutions, $29,800, and then the BVB was $10,367. And then the board member travel, it still hasn't changed from the previous months. Does anybody have any questions about our supplemental reports?
That's okay. The strange change. Well, okay. I was going. Right. Okay, I think I can see it now. Let me. Okay, thank you. 281,000, and then of course the original budget was 160,000 and some change. I do know what maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we talked about this, and of course this was under Dr. Means's administration, that we probably needed to increase the budget for legal for the attorney, and I think we did. I can't recall how much, and I'm just wondering whether we need to increase it some more. Anyone have any comments on that?
I wasn't part of the FY21 budget prep, but starting next month, we'll look and see how much we budgeted for it. I'll be happy to email that to you. I concur with your analysis. I think that we had under budgeted in the past, especially considering all of the open records requests that we've had, especially during FY20, just a flood of open records requests and Mr. Pruitt's office assisted us with much of that. So I don't know, Mr. Pruitt, if you want to touch on any of that.
Sure. So, yeah, that's right. Obviously, last year was kind of tumultuous. But just for overall perspective, going back 10, 12 years ago, you were regularly hitting, high twos, low threes, I think, every year for that. We've brought expenses down. We probably brought the budget down too much trying to follow that trend down. I think I don't recall what the number is for FY21, but I think we're getting back hopefully towards a more level expenditure on that every year.
Well, also, Mike, I do recall, I don't recall the years, but it was something like 2 years in a row. We had legal action, pertaining to special education that really increased the budget for legal actions. And we don't know when that can happen again. It can happen any day. So what I'm saying.
Well, that's an excellent point, Mr. Worthy. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but actually that could happen as you say, any day due to the pandemic, because student, parent, lawyers in special education are nationally on the move, pursuing school districts for, not implementing IEPs that were written pre-pandemic during this post-pandemic or middle of pandemic virtual instruction model. So, I mean, to your credit, unlike some school districts, I mean, you've worked your people to death. You've held IEP meetings for every special education student and adjusted their IEPs to the virtual instruction model. There are obviously some services that are really hard to provide that way, related services, physical and occupational therapy. I think because you have spent the money and your people have worked hard in other areas, hopefully not wood, we won't have those legal problems. But yeah, you never know when an area is going to blow up.
And I'm happy that you mentioned what is going on nationally, because I received these legal clips. I signed up for that through NSVA some years ago, and I just read one just today, and also in the past. But I'm saying all of that to say that, yes, you have different lawsuits being filed all over this country with school districts pertaining to special needs students because of this pandemic. So that's something that we need to be aware of, because I have said this before. When you look at special needs students as a strong lobby in the General Assembly as well as in Congress. So we need to keep an eye on that, because the needs of those students got to be met according to the law, whether it's face-to-face, virtually, or whatever. Of course, now there are some districts lawsuits are being filed, virtually, because parents are saying that students are not getting what they're supposed to be getting. And as you mentioned, IEPs, Mike. So anyway, that's just something we need to keep in mind.
Right. So, Dr. Worthy, does that wrap us up with the supplemental report?
Okay, I don't see the agenda, so that's the last item on the agenda. Am I correct?
No.
No. Well, let's see. I'm trying to move the agenda over so I can see where we are.
Okay,
Can you still see my screen?
I can see it.
I can see a stream, but I cannot see the agenda. The agenda's over to the left too far.
Now you just gave me another place.
It's because of the sizing of the screen.
Yeah.
The only way to fix that, Mr. Worthy, is if you go up to the top of your screen, you'll see a little box that says View Options. and you can click that and get a drop down box, and you can.
I just did.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. So, okay. Move forward, Byron.
Oh.
Do we have to take a vote on this, Mr. Worthy?
Uh,
Do you have to
I
take a
don't
vote?
think so.
No? Okay.
I
Mr.
don't think,
Word,
yes, go ahead.
okay, well, before you do that, Antoine is on the finance committee, not Dr. Yeager, according to Lisa.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. So we have 4 of us. Okay, that's correct. Okay. And Antoine is with us. Okay. Okay, you can move forward.
I don't think we vote on these out of
No,
committee. We don't vote on finance.
no.
Yeah, it's just a requirement that the full board approve them, so you always approve at your
That's correct.
regular meeting. So, yeah, finance committee could recommend approval, but I don't think you've done that in the past.
Sounds good.
No, we haven't. No.
So that brings us up to the paid invoices for 2020, for June of 2020.
Yep.
Once again, it was a requirement that was in our policy, just to provide the board with any invoices that were paid over a certain dollar item. And what we've done is we've just put all of our invoices that have been paid, as low as a penny for the month into an Excel spreadsheet for you to download, view, look. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, and I can get back with you.
So I didn't get to that yet, so I will definitely take a good look at that and send you any questions that I have. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then we did talk briefly when we were going over the financials about the future of those Fund 101, the 110 and 111. That Fund 101, that's where we dump the money from the sales of our previous board office into. It's been there for quite a number of years. And the intent was to put that money towards the purchase of a new board office. And that's exactly what we're doing with it. We're going to transfer that money from Fund 101 into Fund 370 and get ourselves set up to start making some expenditures towards that property. I know that the SPOS department is already looking at having some associated expenses with that property. So we're just kind of going to move it out of Fund 101 into 370, setting ourselves up to pay for renovations and the lease once it starts.
Okay.
So we can transfer the money between funds, but it takes board approval. At what point do we need board approval on making those transfers, or do we?
That's a good question.
That is a lot of money.
Because that is going to show up as a transfer out.
Right.
Show up as an expense to our general fund.
Right.
You'll see it in there. And I did not think about it. It wasn't something that was budgeted for, and it's not part of our budget. I know that is the intent of that money, and I know that whenever we did discuss and Chris kind of put together the different financing options, that is the pot of money that we are going to use to pay for it. So I mean, we could keep it in Fund 100 and make the expenditures out of there. It's just more appropriate to make those expenditures out of a capital project fund.
And I'm fine with that. I just want that audit trail to show where we took board action to approve that transfer.
Yeah, Linda's right. She's exactly right. But I think so. This probably is above, at the board budgetary level of control. But I'm thinking, Byron, if you have these transfers in your monthly reports, then the board's approval of the monthly reports provides that audit trail that Ms. Davis is talking about.
But I'm wondering, because it's such a large amount, if we would not make this, an approval item on maybe a separate item.
I don't recall that we voted on this in the past, not to say that we can't do it now, but it's just the same as the CFO is making us aware of these transfers from one fund like 101 to a capital project fund.
I'm not suggesting it's right. I'm not trying to make, I want us to get to, I want to get to a place where I'm comfortable that I understand movement within the budget. So we're going to deplete a fund, right? 101, and we're going to put it into the capital fund as it should be, just a consent agenda item to say that, you know, this transfer was made for this reason, and just to
Well,
have
if
that
you-
on real. That's all.
Well,
I'm
if you put it on consent agenda, you would be approving it. You reach a consensus on it during the work session, and then of course whatever consensus, consent items you put on the agenda in the work session, you vote on it in a regular meeting. But like I
we
said,
voted to put it in Fund 101. I do believe, that's what I recall now. Maybe we didn't vote, but I know we had a conversation about it. That's a
just
regular-
making the board aware of it, you know. But like I said, I don't see anything wrong with voting on it. But if that's what the board,
I'll be more than happy to put this on the consent agenda, just notating that, hey, we're planning on moving the full balance in Fund 101 to 370. It's going to show up as an expense because it's a transfer item to our
That
general.
would just delight me, and it makes life easier for me because I don't really live in the accounting world.
Okay, yeah, we can do that for the October meeting.
Thank you.
okay.
Fund 110 and 111, the 110 is our Georgia Fund 1 account, and in the past we've had that account opened up to kind of serve as like a savings account that we're earning near market interest rates on, and utilize that quite a bit in FY20. This year we've actually we transitioned banks, so we were with BB&T, and now we've moved everything to Synovus. And one of the carrots that Synovus gave us is they promised us 0.5% interest for 8 months. So what we can earn by either moving our money into Georgia Fund 1, or if we do like we've done under Larry's advice in the past, is buying treasury bills and kind of laddering when those come due to match our district's needs. Both of those options would only earn us right now about 0.1% interest, and Synovus has promised us 0.5% interest. So we're just going to leave all of the money right now in Synovus, and so we're not going to utilize those additional funds, and we're going to be earning 5 times the amount of interest than we would if we had it out in the market in our typical investment vehicles.
So let me be clear. 110 is going to go away.
We'll still have it. We're just not going to have any funds in there. So
Okay.
that just keeps up with our money that we have housed over in Georgia Fund 1, as opposed to Synovus or our general operating account. And 111 kept up with our securities that we were used to, you know, we purchased T-bills at the beginning of the year when the vast majority of taxes came due, and we had a bunch of collections. And then so we would buy T-bills in order to maximize our interest earnings throughout the year.
Right.
In order to maximize our interest earnings now, all we got to do is just keep it in Synovus. So we're going to liquidate anything that's in 110 or 111 and just move it all into Fund 100.
Byron, these treasury bills, how long are they for? 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, or what?
Well, we don't have anything invested in any treasury bills right now. In the past, what we did is we purchased treasury bills and laddered the maturity out. So some of them were 3 months, some were 6 months, some were I don't think we had any greater than a year. So we had several at 12 months. But right now, all of them have either come due, or we called them back a little bit early in June, just due to the banking transition and to maximize our interest earnings with Synovus. Right now, at the end of June, we had nothing in T-bills. It was zero.
Let me ask you this, but the T-bills, It used to be when you invested in T-bills, I know for individually, I mean, yeah, individuals, are you getting your interest up front?
No, what we do with those T-bills, the way that it was structured is, for instance, if you've got if you're buying a $5 million coupon, I think you purchased it at a discount. So like, if it was going to mature at a value of $5 million, you'd purchase it for 4.9 million dollars. So basically you purchase it at a discount, and then once it matured, it would mature at the full value.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because I know for individuals, and you using the correct language there, you purchase it for a discount, but for individuals, you get your interest up front, and then invest that otherwise, and at the maturity of the T-bill, if $10,000, you get the $10,000 back. That's why I was asking that, but I understand what you're saying. They probably do it differently with dealing with what I want to say, commercial people, the school district rather.
May I correct myself if this is an appropriate point? Byron probably knew this and was being polite. I misspoke on your budgetary level of control. In policy DI, it says that your budgetary level of control is at the aggregate level, which means you only have to approve if you go over budget, so in total. So actually, board approval is not required for these transfers between funds. Obviously, fine to put it on the agenda and approve it if you'd like to.
So, yeah.
One thing to say about that, though, if we did transfer it out, it will show up as an expenditure to the general fund, and it may put us over budget aggregate wise. So I do think it probably would be a good idea to still bring it to the board.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you bring it to the board. Yeah. Make them aware of it.
Yeah, I think it's important. Again, if we're trying to live in this transparent world, I'm still confused about some things that happened last year that, got laid at Dr. Means' feet, and I still don't know how it happened, but still, I want us to go forward with that 100% transparency, and there's nothing to lose by sharing that information. So.
Oh, yeah. It should be shared with the entire board.
For actions of the board or things like that, I search for that big number or that big thing, and I wouldn't find that necessarily under expenditures if I were looking back through the financial report, right? This seems to be a big deal to me. So, and I think the same thing with the, even though we don't have to vote on the transferring of the funds from the money from 100 and 101 and 110, it's an action by the board to that was presented to us when it was established. And so if it was given to us when it was established, it makes sense to me that we would actually be given that same information when we do something different with it. Because the whole BB&T thing definitely came to the board. Now, whether we voted on it or not, it was discussed. And so that's all I'm saying is that's exactly what I'm saying. When we're making financial transactions that inform the board so that it can better understand and manipulate and understand what's happening with the budget, then I think then that falls to me under my fiduciary responsibility to know about that. So thank you. But tell me again, we're moving this to, you said Georgia Fund 1, or where are we moving it to?
We are, because of the interest that was promised to us by Synovus transition, it makes much more sense, when you talk about your fiduciary responsibility, if you're trying to maximize your interest, maximize your investment earnings, if you can only earn 0.1% interest at Georgia Fund 1 versus 0.5% interest at Synovus, it makes much more sense. And as a fiduciary, you really want to put the money over in Synovus and keep it in Synovus because you're maximizing your interest earnings. So what we're doing is just liquidating everything that is in Georgia Fund 1 and putting it all in Synovus.
Thank you. I wasn't sure what Georgia Fund 1 was, so that's probably the better question, but now you've told me, so thank you.
Yep, just kind of some history. Georgia Fund 1, it's provided to small government. It's a part of the Georgia, I wish I could use
I
the,
remember when it was presented to us to establish that fund, but again, I did not remember the name of that fund.
okay,
So I'm fine with that.
okay.
And again, I don't know if we voted on it, but it was definitely presented to the board. And at the time, it was like the Synovus gift. It was a gift from BB&T, and it was a thing that made sense in terms of maximizing the earnings. So I'm good. And I like the Synovus number. I do.
That brings me to my conclusion, Dr. Worthy. I'm wrapped up.
Okay, thank you very much, Byron. We're down to discussion items, and we don't have any discussion items with the committee members and also any board members that joined us. If you all don't have any additional questions or comments for Byron, I'm going to call for adjournment. Any comments or questions, additional comments and questions for Byron?
So I do, Byron, I had sent a list of questions on the budget, and I got answers from some of the presentations, but I didn't get a couple of specific answers that I'm looking for. And I know you've inherited this, but I also know you worked on it. So I may resend those, or may I resend those to you with the for the two that I did not get an answer to. And I'm in no hurry to hear them, but I would love to get an answer to some numbers that I came up with going through the
No problem whatsoever. I was not part of the budget preparation process in my previous role. We're kind of isolated from that. That's one thing that Tom probably won't be helping me out with. I work with Jennifer Frazier
Okay.
on that. So whatever questions you have, I'll be happy to go back to her. I'll look back through Chris's notes and see if I can't help you out.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
Okay, if there's no further comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by
You can
Linda.
count on me.
Got a second from who?
Antoine.
Second from Antoine. Okay, all in favors? Aye.
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 Did I hear you, Dr. Dagman?
She had to leave,
She
Mr. Worthy.
exited off.
Oh, she left. Okay, anyway, we still got a quorum. Okay, thank you very much.